So I admire your vigilance to stay here. Today we're going to talk about React hooks. Also, this is actually designated to people who know about React, so I would like to know how many of you have heard about React or have coded in React. Okay, some bits there, some bits there. Okay, then it's a lot better than I hoped. I don't have to go into details this late at night. So, if you're new to React, all you need to understand is two things. There are class components, there are functional components. Class components are your typical class with functions in it, methods. And functional component is basically a function, which is a component. Previously, we talked about atomic design. And in atomic design, one component is like one UR unit, for example. That you can make it with a class, you can make it with a function. React hooks makes our life a lot easier with transforming this. Can you uncomment this? So we have some highlighting. So this is basically a class component. And this thing basically has your class declaration, it has its constructor, it has a render function, which is basically the main HTML return part, and then there is some methods. Specifically, we want to use these usually when we want to have the state, or something more than a state. And then, can you scroll up and show the functional component as well? So this is basically the same code. It does exactly the same, but with hooks and with just basically as a function. And this is a lot cleaner than the stuff below. And we're going to show how to get from the below part to the top part. Okay. So yeah, React 16.8 added React hooks. This was, I think, end of 2018. It allowed us to be a lot easier, a lot more flexible, and allowed us to create a more readable code. So yeah, it's completely opt-in. So if you want to use it, use it. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. It's completely backwards compatible, so you don't have to just completely switch to the new option and that's it. And basically, it aims to remove a lot of pain which comes with classes when you want to use state in a class. Like if you had a functional component, you want to switch to using state in that component, then it's a lot of pain to actually refactor a lot of code. So yeah, previously functional components were stateless, so they didn't have a state. And when we talk about state, basically it's like if you imagine a human, your state is you're awake or you're asleep. I think most of you are still awake here. And then when we switch to the current functional components with hooks, that means that our functional components became actually with a state. They have a state now in them. Okay, so what drawbacks we have when we use a class? We have a lot of huge components. They have a lot of code in them. Who has written basically, like, if you have all the lifecycle methods in a React class, is it easy to manage it? Yes, no? No? Who has used hooks before, by the way? Okay, most of you. That's also cool. Yeah, the duplicate logic part is also like we have to create the same bit of managing some specific states in multiple different classes, and then it's really hard to copy-paste all over the place, and then we forget to fix it in one place, and then we have bugs, so that's not cool. And then complex patterns, basically the whole lifecycle methods that we need to manage, again, that's also really like a lot of things to do. And who has seen this bit? Is this nice? Is this understandable when you open your developer tools and then you see this and you try to find where is my component that I want to debug? What is being passed to it? So we want to avoid this, and to avoid this, we basically start using React hooks, which allows us to have less wrappers around everything that we have. Okay, so basically we're going to go through most of the common hooks and then a little bit of the custom ones. Some examples basically will contain, yeah, go ahead to the, so we will show, this is basically how to use a hook. You want to add something, or should I go through the basic code?
Yeah, hello everyone, I'm here to show some examples for you. So basically, it's first built-in React useState hook. And let me show how it looks like in the code. So yeah, as Janis said, the main reason why we use hooks just to keep our code clear and it's kind of functional components all the time. So kind of the same approach without hooks, high-order components to share the logic, without any additional tricks or some complicated patterns. So you can use just a function, and it's easy to understand, easy to read, easy to reuse, easy to modify, maintain, and stuff like this. So currently we have useState example. So what we have to do, first of all, we need to define useState two variables. First, once you define your state, you have to pass some default value in your state. Currently, it's just a number 0, and we have two exposed variables. First, it's count itself. It's our 0 by default, and set count. It's our setter. It's the same as we have in class set state. So, but of course, you can change name to what you would like to see there. It can be whatever, I don't know, set to, count, or whatever. And yep, and if we will try to check examples, so this is our useState example. It's exactly what we just seen in my code. So once I click this button, I see that my component becomes rendered all the time, and new value rendered. Yeah, so as you can see, first of all, it's much easier to understand, and it's lighter solution. It's less memory because of it's not extended from React components. So you just can use in your function what you would like to use. It's a more kind of better approach to adjust your function according to your needs. Yeah. So, any questions so far?
Faster, slower, more code, less code? Okay, we'll just keep going, I guess.
Yeah, so, and of course you can use state multi-times. So if you would like to have a couple of different states, you can do like this. Or even, as you can see, it can be array, or it can be object. So kind of no limitations for you at all.
Okay, reducer. Any ideas what this thing does? I assume uses reduce. But that's the beauty of this whole thing. Like when they introduced hooks, they thought about how we used our components and our code previously, and they just made it straightforward to switch to. And it's all like once you do the switch, which takes around a week probably, to like switch your thinking, but then it's a lot easier.
Yeah, the same if you try to check example. So useReducer, it's a bit more complex approach, but at the end, it's kind of, you can create your own Redux very easy. So it's function, it's your reducer, so you can define some set of types which will be handled by your reducer. And then of course it can be different files, so here is just an example. You can define it as a different file and then import it here. And also this reducer have initial state, so once you create a user, you can pass initial state, it will be your state. And yeah, the same idea, but instead of set state, you have dispatch here, and the same idea, you have to pass object, and one required field inside the object is type, so you need to put type, and based on your type, your reducer will do something for you. So increment and decrement, and the same for inside the code. So I can click to increment, and the same for decrement. Yep, I think we discussed it already.
useEffect. So currently we can use state basically quite efficiently, and then a little bit of Redux minus the context. The next part is, well, we want to do all the lifecycle methods because we don't still want to create the whole class. And to do that, basically we have useEffect, which in one phase is both component did mount, and did update. So at the same time, you basically, instead of having 3 different places how to handle what happens when your component was created, destroyed, or was updated, you have only one effect, and that's it. So instead of all of this code, which in a real component, not an example, would be a lot more code and a lot more complex, you would have it all in one place, and you can also separate different things that you need to do. So if you, for example, you need to set a timer, you do it in one useEffect. You can have also another useEffect which would do something else. And then you can have different methods basically that would handle them like separately. And you can separate the logic itself rather than having component did mounted, then it has to do like 5 different things. And then component did mount does the same 5 different things to destroy whatever was affected.
Yep, exactly. So in current example, we have just one useEffect. And it's the same like component did mount or component did update, just because of second param, it should be array of dependency. If it's empty, then it will be re-rendered each time when your function will be rendered. And I can show a bit more complex example for you. So here, for example, we have first useEffect component, which is the same as component to mount. And once it mounted, we make interval and set time in our local state using this interval. At the same time, once our component will be unmounted, we would like to stop doing it, and we use so if you try to return function from your useEffect, this function will be fired during the unmounting. And also we have another effect to handle all updates, and this effect just update our document title, put new value in seconds in our document title. Let me show how it works. Yeah, so this is effect without ability to clean up, without component unmount logic. And this is more complex. So let me start from the beginning. So as you can see, once component mounted, our set intervals updating the value all the time. So it's our updated state. And if I try to change my role just to unmount the component, in this case, as you can see, component will mount in console, and no more updates in our document title. Okay. One more time code. This is the mount. This is this function to handle unmount logic, and this is for updates.
So for those who didn't use hooks, does this seem easier and who are familiar with React mostly? Or would you stick with the classes? Did we convince you now? I think there was more hands there, but I know React, but I don't use hooks. Would you at least try to use them? That's my question. Okay, so I guess more cooler examples with useEffect, right?
We already discussed that we can use effects multiple times, so you can create 20 effects, and its ability to separate your logic, just to keep it separately. It's really nice, because previously it was just did mount, and you have to put everything there. Yeah, by the way, so for example, this is how our effect works. So this is second param, and yeah. So count is our array of dependencies. So this effect will be fired only if count will be changed. And what does it mean in reality? Previously, when we use component did update, for example, we need to make comparison inside the component. We need to add conditional. If something changes and not equal to previous state, then we can do something. Here we just can put dependency. If count will be changing, please do it, and that's it. And as I said before, we can put many of useEffects in the same component, so it's easy to maintain, to understand, to change it. Stuff like this. Yep.
Yeah. useCallback, basically this is same idea with hooks, but instead of creating all the binds and everything else that we need to handle, this allows us to create a function which would be a callback. So again, same approach, making our lives easier, making something a lot more manageable, and then this would be basically called whenever the function gets, like the little array at the bottom changes, and then it will update the value of the function.
Yeah, so one problem with functional components. So if function will be called again, then everything inside function will be kind of created from the scratch again. So if you try to create your function without useCallback, each time when component will be rendered, it will produce new function as a new link to your memory inside in your memory as a new link. And once you will try to put this in DOM, your shadow DOM will try to compare old link with the new one, and it will be different because of any kind of objects comparison use links. And this piece of your DOM will be rendered, but in case of it's not needed, you need to put it in callback, and it's mean that this function will be memorized for you, and only if A and B will be changed, then this function will be recalculated one more time for you. So yeah, it's kind of, let me show the example. Okay, we don't have examples for useCallback.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Well, this is a public repo, so if someone wants to write a code, then submit a pull request, please.
Yeah, so, and also we would like to discuss a bit kind of this useCallback and the whole idea with hooks use JavaScript pattern memorization. And here is a like small example how memorization works. Of course, it's more complex, but it can give you ability to understand how kind of value memorized. So once you will call this memo function, as a result, it's returned for you another function, and in scope we have in closure we have two new variables, and once you will call this function which will be returned, we can use these variables to store your values, and then if you try to call it again, we can compare your input with memo input and make a calculation only if your input changed. Yeah, so it's kind of JavaScript pattern for memorization.
So basically this allows us to save the amount that the user's computer has to calculate every time when he clicks on something. If you use this, it's less cycles to render something, it's less cycles to get some data onto the user screen, which means it's faster there, it's more responsive, your mobile phones eat less memory, less battery, and as a result you get more efficient website which looks better and is easier to manage. So a lot of this gives a lot of efficiency as well to your overall application if you build it correctly. So yeah, and then useMemo does that even better. It allows you to memorize not just a function, but basically the whole result of a. Well, wait, this is useCallback. Is this useCallback? It's useMemo.
Yeah, it's useMemo. Just some mistake in our title. Yeah, the main difference between useCallback and useMemo that useCallback memorizes the function for you and returns the link to function all the time. But useMemo memorizes its function itself, but its return memorized result. So we use useCallback to memorize some callbacks, which we use to handle something like on-click, on-change, whatever. And we use useMemo to memorize some value which calculated dynamically. So if you need to, I don't know, multiple A and B, you can do it inside Memo and use this value all the time. Of course, in reality, it can be expensive calculations, so it can be much more values, and it will be memorized for you and will be recalculated only if it will be necessary.
You can even save on the backend calls if you don't need to every time go to some system based on if you have the same ID and the same username and you don't you know what value you want. If they didn't change, why do you want to go back to the backend system and check it again? Of course, it depends on the code overall, but you can save a lot of time again.
Yeah, and here we have good examples. So the same functional component, we have unique props count, by default 0. So we use it to apply in our global state. so our count will be 0. And here we have minimized value. So currently it's dependent on initial count, and of course it will be the same all the time, so it will be calculated only once. And we just add 5 to initial value. So as a result it will be 5. And the count will be 0 from the beginning, and we can set count. Once the set count will be clicked, it will bring for us +1. And the same initial count all the time. Let me show. So as you can see 0 here and 5 here, I click button, I see that my local state changes, but my calculated minimized value is the same. And I can easily apply additional logic if I would like. For example, I would like to add count as a dependency, and then I would like to say if count will be equal to 10, then return count instead of our default value. So now we have the same 5. So if 1 it's not equal to 10, once I reach 10, my minimized value will be recalculated. So as a result, I can easily control when it's necessary to be recalculated.
Okay. Use effects with, well, how to use them, yeah, basically when to use useCallback and when to use useMemo. Essentially, if you need a calculated value, which requires some heavy calculations, then you probably want to use memo. If you have a function which basically needs to calculate something, and it only depends on things, then you want to use callback. It's kind of weird to understand when you don't use them, I guess. useRef. Any ideas what this one does? Again, a reference. So previously, to get a reference, like I personally, I think never properly used references in class case, because it was just too painful, and I was figuring out ways how to avoid that. With useRef, it's a lot easier, basically.
Yeah, the same quick example. So useRef. Currently we have button and we have input, and once the button will be clicked, we would like to make input on to focus input. So here is our useRef. It's our input. Then we just put it inside the input as a ref param. And once the button clicked, we check if input exists. Then we use input current and make focus for this reference. So this is our input. Of course, I can make focus like this, but at the same time, I can click the button and input becomes focus automatically. Like clean code, easy to apply, easy to understand, and easy to change something.
Do you have an example with the class components for this? No. Oh, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, but our expectation that guys understand that it was nightmare before.
useContext. Well, basically, if you use this one and then a few previous hooks, then you have your Redux just for you. It allows you basically to store more global objects. That's an input.
Yeah, the same kind of why we use useContext. For example, if you're using styled components right now, they use useContext, and Redux also use context. So current example, just to bring some understanding how it can be used. For example, we have two different teams. One is light and dark, second is dark. So here we just create context and put light as the default one. Of course, the same. We can separate it in different files. Here is just an example, and then we can import this context to some place where we use it. But before, we need to kind of on our up level make a context provider and put for some value from our set of teams. Currently it's light. So all components which is inside which children's for this provider will be able to be subscribed to this context. And based on the fact that this button component inside our provider, we can easily connect to our context. So we use React useContext, and then we can use this values to apply styling for our button. So currently we use just background and foreground. Let me show the example. So as you can see, we use light theme right now, so it's light. But once I would like to use different, I can switch to dark. Oops, it's wrong place. Should be here. And now we have dark button.
And of course, you can do that with useState and all the useEffects and etc. to just change it by user actions. I guess.
Yep.
Okay, I guess we're moving on to more cool stuff, right? Yeah, so custom hooks. So if all the previous stuff was not enough for you, you can basically write your own hooks and use them wherever you want to use them. So it basically gives you the full flexibility of anything else you want to imagine and build yourself.
Yeah, so it's main reason why hooks were introduced. Because like built-in hooks is just hooks. If we are using component like as a class, we can say that, okay, I use class, I know how to do it, how to update, how to, I don't know, do something. No reason for me to switch to hooks. But let me back to this nice image. So if you use classes in your React application, only one way to share some logic between two different classes, it's create host high-order component, put this logic in this high-order component, and then you can kind of wrap your component on this host, and it's produce ability to use the same logic twice. So if you have to share, if you would like to share it, you need to wrap additional component by host, and it gives you ability to share logic between two different class components. If we are talking about hooks, I have two examples for you. For example, first it's use mouse position. The same, it's more about your imagination. You can create your own hooks which will be related to your project, to your application, to your needs, but here is just an example. So the same, we have local state here, we have useEffect, and we create listener on mouse move. And once mouse moved, we just set new position, and we also have unmount here to remove listener just to keep our memory clean. And this hook return position as a result. And now if I would like to reuse it somewhere, I just imported this use mouse position. Then I can call it here, and then I have that position, and I can use it without any pain, without any problems, whatever. Like I can do it in 10 different components without any problem for me, and without producing unnecessary DOM elements all the time. So if we switch to example, this is the mouse. So as you can see, it's 0, 0. Once I become to move my mouse, I get new values from my custom hook. So second one, more interesting for you, I think. It's ability to understand where is your block in view right now or not. It can be helpful, for example, if you would like to create lazy loading images. So you don't want to load the image if it's not in viewport right now. So it's kind of the same idea. I can share GitHub and you can see it later, but we have some set of states. We have observers, so we use new browser API to observe for my element. Also, we have useEffect to apply some logic here. So, for example, if we would like to disable if it's in view, it means once it will be in view, it will be disabled and no more observed for this component. And the same, of course, if it will be unmounted, we would like to stop observing. And as a result, we return to values in view and set node. So let me switch to my page now. So the same idea. I created this custom hook once. I thought about it, tested, and now I can use it as a library, let's say. No need for me to modify something there. Now our page, I created kind of some example page have 2000 pixels height, and at the end of page we have block which have 200 height, and yeah, in case it will be in view, we will show in view now or out of view. Now let's switch to example. So as you can see, now my page rendered and my hook fired once, or maybe it's because of it's just an example. We have routing here; it's can be multiple times, but I don't care. I just see false all the time, and my main page can do nothing in case if it's false. So I put some threshold there. It's 95%. So my expectation that it will be switched to true only when 95% of my component will be in view. And as you can see right now, we see some piece of this block, but we have out of view there because it's not reached the threshold. And once it becomes visible fully, my custom hook return for me true, and based on this true, I show for you in view now. But of course, instead of this, I can load some image or do whatever I would like to.
Send some analytics.
Yeah.
Send some analytics, for example, because a lot of the cases is, hey, have I shown this to the customer? Have I shown this to the user? That he see this item, and then you send analytics, and then you can fire off analytics based on this. So, yeah, I think that's it.
A couple of slides more.
Yeah, but we're done. No more code, I promise. Yes, it's done, finally over. So basically you can find all these examples. I think if you need the link itself, we can share it through wherever. Just come to ask us as well. Yeah, you can make photos, you can just Google or go to GitHub and this is us. The least important bit, the code was more important than us. So we're at the end. Yeah, questions?
What is the difference between custom hooks and functional components? Because it seems to me like they are just like functional components.
Your function components would return HTML code. Your custom hook returns specific value that you need, but you can technically make it return HTML code as well.
Yeah, I can just add some piece from my side. Exactly, it's a good point. In reality, you have just functional components all the time. And yes, your custom hook can create some piece of JSX DOM for you if it's needed for some reasons, for example. You can, I don't know, it can return a function, and you can call this function, put some param inside, and as a result, some piece of your DOM logic will be rendered with your param inside. So, kind of, it's up to your imagination how to use this custom hook. But yeah, in reality, it's just a kind of functional component. It doesn't return JSX for you all the time, but it can return something or even nothing for you. It can be analytics stuff, whatever you would like. The idea that you can easily separate your logic in one function, it's easy to test. You can put it somewhere in your folder with hooks, and then no changes anymore. It's just your set of hooks which you use for some reasons in your application. And you can reuse it. It can be on change, on click hook, or a hook which can provide for you some piece of general JSX which can be applied by children, so you can put something in your use hook or your use hook. So it's fully up to you how to use it. And if you try to Google it, we have 1 million custom hooks for different ideas. And it's also good that sometimes you need to, for example, to omit some props, yeah, and you, instead of writing your own utilities or connect with Lodash or whatever, you can just find hook. It's simple piece of code, you can easily check, understand, no dependency, put in your code, ready to go. For example, use the bounce. It's also custom hook which we use in our application. It's depends on your needs, let's say.
Or?
You were showing reducers and how to create a custom Redux. Is there any plugins to support the same way as Redux plugin for Chrome to see your state?
You can write your own. If you make your own Redux, then you have to make your own
But maybe
Chrome
someone
app.
already did it. I'm just wondering, is there any?
Well, but if someone has to write a custom application to read your context,
Well, is it globally available to browser to make some plugin to
I mean, if you try to Google, I definitely know that some people created already their own Redux, some extension for you, but what the current Redux extension? It's just extension. You can create your own extension for your nodes, for example, instead of just using your whatever. So, in general, you can find it. I definitely know that someone already did it, but if you would like to create your own Redux, for example, I continue to use Redux because of it's have good maintained, a lot of libraries. Okay, I know how to create, but what's the reason to create my own Redux? But if you would like, you can create extension for Chrome, for Firefox, for all browsers, and make it open source, and maybe it will be fun also.
Are functional components pure by default?
pure, or functional components pure by default.
So is it like React component or React pure component?
Yeah, so previously it was like poor component just because of it was extended from different class, and this class was without state and without life cycles. Now, according to new convention, no more such components at all. So now, and it was also from the beginning it was stateless, then it was pool, and now everything becomes just functional components. So if you use hooks, all your components is just the functions.
I was thinking about the functionality. Do they automatically check if the props are not changing, then we are not re-rendering?
Yep. So for this, you can use React Memo. Its ability to memorize your function from the beginning. So all your functional component can be added to React Memo. It's they have also lazy load functionality, but it's why we didn't describe Memo just because of Memo. It's not a hook. It's just ability to memorize the whole function. But of course, if it will be primitives, this Memo can easily compare and understand that, okay, it was 2, now it becomes 2, nothing to re-render. But if it will be objects, anyway, you have to use some reselect library to memorize object to bring the same link during the re-render.
Anyone else?
Is there any performance benefits?
Huge, I would say.
Like what?
So, for example, imagine you have to create a class, right? How much memory class takes, and then you have to also, your browser has to understand this is a class. I have to handle all the lifecycle methods, everything that is in a class, even if you need to render just a little, I don't know, clicker. Like you have a button, you click, and then the input changes based on state. You have a whole class to handle that. then you have to have memory for everything there, for all the lifecycle methods, and it has to go through all the lifecycle methods every time you click on it. In this case, when you use a function with a hook, that means you have only that function plus that hook and that's it. So it's a lot less memory. It takes a lot less to compare everything. It doesn't have to go through all the lifecycle methods. So it saves a lot. It's actually a big increase in performance because you just cut out all the pieces that you don't use.
Yeah, and one additional update for me that in reality we don't have classes in JavaScript, it's just sugar. So once your class will be created, it will create a lot of prototypes, a lot of kind of additional effort to create the class itself. If you create function, it's kind of native object for JavaScript, and JavaScript interpreter can do it faster.
I wouldn't agree that's true, because there is a garbage collector in JavaScript which is pretty powerful, which takes care of all the classes which you create during your work. And I think the biggest benefit which it will give you is the ability to additionally render stuff, because right now there is a depth parameter to all the hooks, which is basically the only thing which helps you to help you render less, which is the kind of biggest point to performance.
Yes, but at the same time, of course, we can create application using classes and we can handle corrector rendering there.
Yes, you can also create functional component with incorrect rendering and then end up in some.
You see, it's more kind of discussion performance. Yeah, I agree with you. It's powerful if we use Mac or not old laptop. And in this case, kind of during the review, you can say, what's the reason to use sum just to avoid looping the whole array? You can loop the whole array, garbage collector, everything powerful, everything fine. You can loop it many times because garbage collector. But at the end, once your application begin kind of huge, and you have it 1,000 times, unnecessary operations, unnecessary recalculations, tons of components, tons of classes, at the end it becomes slow.
Do you use React in production in your project?
Yep.
Did you switch to hooks already?
We started from, thanks to God that we started from the hooks from the beginning.
Okay, lucky.
Yeah.
But that's the nice part of it. If you need to write new stuff, you just write new stuff with hooks because you can just opt in. And the old stuff, over time, when it has to be refactored or it's not needed anymore, then you just basically get abolished and that's it. It's not the
I'm
point.
basically asking because if you switch from classes to hooks, it's much easier to notice some performance gains, because I had a huge experience of transforming application from classes to hooks, and performance-wise, it basically nothing changed. Only thing which changed was we ran the loops, basically.
Yeah, but re-render loops takes the most time, don't they?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, but you need to take care of the rendering, not about the memory, some abstract classes,
Well,
some such stuff.
Okay, if you're on a Mac, imagine you have a little phone, which, like, I know, iPhone 6, an older version with less memory.
It's probably has more memory than my Mac.
And it's kind of two reasons why it happens. Your previous application was super cool, and new one also, or both of them have the same performance problems. If you switch into hooks, it doesn't solve all your mistakes, let's say.
True.
More questions?
Yeah, one more question. Can I use like a promise in the effect to await for a response from somebody?
It can be, but it's kind of better to avoid this, because in reality, when you create React application, it should be done using one-way flow. What does it mean? If you, for example, would like to call API, you have to call it without waiting for result. No need to wait for result and then try to apply this result to your state. Instead of this, you have to call it somewhere in your models, in your high application, like piece of your application. It will be async call, and once it will be resolved, you have to update your state. It can be Redux or whatever, and new props will come to your component automatically, and it will cause a render. This is why one-way flow. We try not to wait for async operations from component at all. Of course, it's like just a small example of something.
comment behind?
It was more like a partial answer, not necessarily in production environment, but you can use a memo to keep a promise and use it in your useEffect condition.
Yeah, of course, as I said before.
useEffect itself is synchronous, it doesn't expect promise to be returned.
Yep.
A comment rather than a question. Recently started using a Cursor project that was started in 2015 and still uses React.create class syntax. So it all works together nicely and you don't have to wait for a new project to start using this.
Yeah, and that is why I switched to React once Angular 2 was released. Because why? I learned something for 2 years, and now kind of, never mind, you can start again from the beginning. Currently we have like full compatibility. You can use whatever you would like to use.
Okay, I think we're gonna stay here. If you want to ask some questions more, you just can come up, and everyone else, you're free to go. I don't have a sock to give to each of you though, but I think that's a nice transition to you. Thanks.